Happy New Year, and as we begin 2021, you may have noticed a couple of changes. Stick with us. And if you get an opportunity, like, share, recommend, whatever you do on social media, both the Best 60 Seconds and charliegiroux.com. Because, as we've said previously, this is unedited, unscripted, completely extemporaneous recording. We don't do a lot of changes. You're stuck with what you get. I do not read off of a teleprompter. As I've told people many, many times, if I did, it would be a whole lot better. And before we proceed into what is going to be, I'm sure, another tumultuous year, we thought we'd take a quick look back at some of the best, if you will, moments of 2020, the highlights of the previous year, where, to be very candid, there weren't all that many highlights. So for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week. Enjoy a few other best 60 seconds. As we welcome in the new year, where else to be than at Pennsylvania's Farm Show, a week-long exposition of Pennsylvania agriculture, the largest indoor agricultural exposition in the world. And finally, those of us in the public relations world mourn the loss of Harold Burson, the godfather of public relations, voted as the most influential public relations person of the century, and a man who led the world's largest public relations firm, died at age 98. I had the opportunity to meet with him several times, always found him to be the most charming gentleman whose politics were actually a little right of center. The issue for Bloomberg is going to be, what's he really like when people have a chance to get to see him up close and personal, both on the debate stage and out on the hustings? Because it is increasingly apparent that although Mike Bloomberg looks good in 30-second ads, he really isn't that nice of a guy. He stayed out of the debates up until now, but the Democrats nationally changed the rules so that he could be on the debate stage with 5 others in Nevada. And Mike Bloomberg had to have wished, the minute he walked out, that he had not made that decision, because it didn't take 3 minutes before Elizabeth Warren lit into him. And we know one thing about Joe Biden. He has never been a very effective candidate for president. In his multiple runs, he's never done very well on his own. Now he's pretty much out there in a one-on-one race with Bernie Sanders for the nomination. He'll probably get that. Well, there's no sports. The stock markets have been in rapid decline, cratering sometimes during this week, 2,000-point declines in a single day. Our 401ks have been cut by a third, and we're all stuck inside with social distancing and an early onset of cabin fever. So this has to be the best 60-ish seconds of your week. Well, we had to emerge from the bunker of quarantine for this week's best 60-ish seconds, and without sports. And think about it. This is the weekend when March Madness would have reduced the 64-team tournament from 16 to 8 to the Final Four. Probably the best weekend in basketball. We're without that. At one of the recent rallies for getting Pennsylvania and the country back to work, one of the signs said simply, "I need a haircut." Let me tell you, that's true for so many of us these days. Now you've got Greta Thunberg, the climate change child advocate, being brought in as a medical expert to discuss the Wuhan flu. If the media doesn't want us to laugh, why do they do this stuff? You've just got to ask, what's going on? Is the world truly coming to an end? NASA scientists and researchers in Antarctica told us that they may, underline may, have discovered a parallel universe. It really has become very disturbing to listen to Joe Biden speak at any length. It is a word salad made with 5-week-old lettuce. It's the first day of summer, and I know all of you have been eagerly anticipating this moment because it's the day on which we reveal the 2020 summer reading list. The top 10. First, The Life and Loves of Thaddeus Stevens, a story about a radical Republican by a radical Democrat. Former Lieutenant Governor and Acting Governor of Pennsylvania, Mark Singal. One of the truly great books about Winston Churchill. The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson. The story of the Churchills during the Blitzkrieg. Lou Gehrig, The Lost Memoir. Baseball is back, and this week teams will report for spring training, if you want to call it that, in July. Written by a justice by the name of David Wecht. Later in the week, David Weck's father, himself a Democrat and probably the most well-known medical doctor in the state, said this about Governor Wolf's most recent pronouncement. He called it totally absurd. That's from Democrat Cyril Weck. Can you imagine what the July 4th Independence Day celebrations are going to be like at the Weck household? I'm still betting on Kamala Harris. I said from the beginning I thought she'd be on the national ticket. I still think she will. She's a relatively safe pick. And this is a man running a rose basement strategy. He doesn't want to take any risks. I don't think he will with this one either. And on the downside of business, look at poor Dan Snyder and the Washington Redskins. The minority owners there now want him to sell his interest. Frankly, I'm not a Redskins fan, obviously, but that should have happened a long time ago. So I sit here among the vestiges of conventions past. Each one of these has a great story. I'll have to tell a few sometime. But with a little bit of melancholy, because for the first time since 1976, I missed a Republican National Convention, but I'm pretty sure I get a special dispensation because the year 2020 has been unlike any we've seen before, and certainly these conventions were. That the Trump administration got criminal justice reform for the first time. The First Step Act, the president says, is just a first step and a real beginning. Coach John Thompson, and anybody that knows me knows I'm not a big Georgetown Hoyas fan, but you have to tip your hat to the accomplishments of Coach Thompson, the first African-American coach to lead a team to a national championship. That was 1984, but then 1985 in the Villanova Wildcats against the Hoyas in an epic battle, and we all know how that one ended. But Coach Thompson, may he rest in peace. Since I'm here in my native land of Brazil, I think I ought to say something about the man on my shirt, Jair Bolsonaro. President Bolsonaro is often referred to as the Trump of the tropics. And you know the parallels between what's going on here in Brazil and what's going on back at home in the good old US of A are uncanny. Here, the media beats up President Bolsonaro on a daily basis. They really hate him. But the people love him. And the presidential campaign is in full swing. And today I'm in suburban Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at CPAC, PA, entitled America versus Socialism. I think that's a pretty good moniker for this campaign. Justice Ginsburg, of course, was highly respected by all, even those who didn't agree with her on very much. And her friendship with fellow Associate Justice Antonin Scalia was legendary. Although they didn't agree on very much, they made sure that their differences were philosophical and never personal, and they really showed us a better way. Interestingly, they both died in the waning days of a president's term and during a presidential election, setting up some really emotional, high-pitched fights for the seat that was vacated. And this week we had a debate and debates about a debate. First of all, the vice presidential debate, which ordinarily don't rise to the level of presidential ones for obvious reasons. A, there's only one, and B, it's for the number 2 spot, once described by John Nance Garner as not worth a bucket of warm spit. And this week we'll begin the confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, President Trump's nominee for the vacancy on the Supreme Court of the United States. And now it's official, Justice Amy Coney Barrett. It should have been unanimous, but she still got 52 votes in the Senate. And yesterday we saw once again the examples of really bad grooming, something that folks said several years back cost Robert Bork a seat on the Supreme Court. And here comes Jack Dorsey looking like he came out of the Charlie Manson gang, for crying out loud. I guess when you're that rich, you can look however you want. So now there exists the opportunity to cement and grow a new Republican coalition. It's not going to be a party that looked like our fathers or grandfathers' Republican Party. The silk stocking days of the Brie and Chablis set are moving aside, and the party is moving out of the country clubs into union halls and beer and a shot bars. Republicans had gains all over the place. Not only did they hold most of the Senate seats that they needed to, but despite the fact that billions of dollars were pumped into trying to defeat them, they picked up seats in the House. God is good all the time. Let us give thanks. And to each of you, a blessed, happy, and healthy Thanksgiving Day. There's some good news on the Wuhan flu front, and that is that it now appears that a vaccine's release is imminent. Additional lockdowns, national mandates to wear masks, etc., one big word emerges, and that is hypocrisy. The folks that say, do as I say, not as I do, are becoming greater and greater all the time. We can fill up the rest of this program talking about governors and mayors, incidentally, every single one of them Democrats. I don't want to make this too partisan, but it's a fact. Pivotal runoff races in Georgia, where 2 U.S. Senate seats are in play and could potentially produce a Senate majority for the Democrats or an absolute majority for the Republicans. Right now, the Senate is 50 to 48, advantage to the Republicans, and control of the U.S. Senate hangs in the balance. So what you really have is almost a parliamentary style election where you're not simply voting for 2 individuals, but you're voting for the party that you want to see control the United States Congress for the next 2 years. The implications of that are staggering. Musk says that he's going to put human beings on Mars within 6 years. Think about that. When John F. Kennedy told the American people he'd get us to the moon in that period of time, a lot of people scoffed. Don't scoff at Elon Musk. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And for now, that really is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.